Okay, Shay, we're working on polynomial division today. So, for the very first thing that you need to know, it's just a reach back to long division. So hopefully you can remember that. I'm sure you do. So the first step is to always write all of your polynomials in descending order. Okay? And then the second thing to remember is to put all of the terms in there. So write all terms. So for example, if I had 3x cubed plus 2x plus 6, before I was going to divide that polynomial, I would actually have to put in the missing x squared term. So I'd have to go ahead and write it as 3x squared plus 0x squared, or sorry, 3x cubed plus 0x squared plus 2x plus 6, so that you could actually make sure that you have all of the terms represented in perfect descending order. Okay? So if we're going ahead and doing our polynomial division, we're going to write our divisor out front of the house. Remember the house? Okay, and then the polynomial that we're dividing is going to go underneath. So for example, if I was going to divide negative 4x, actually let's write this up here, negative 4x to the fourth plus 2x squared minus x minus 3, what I'm going to have to make sure to do when I write it under here is write negative 4x to the fourth plus 0x cubed plus 2x squared minus x minus 3. So it's all written in descending order, and I've got all variables represented. So say I was dividing that by x minus 3. That guy's going to come out front, and then I'm going to start my division. So basically what you're doing is trying to figure out how many times would this first term in the polynomial fit into the first term, or sorry, the first term in the divisor, how many times would it fit into the first term in this polynomial? So you're going to look at it, and I know there's a 1 here as a coefficient, so I could fit 1 into this guy, 1x into this guy, negative 4 times, right? So I'm going to go negative 4 up here, and then I'm going to write the term with just one smaller exponent at the top here. Okay, so that essentially when I go ahead and I multiply this guy back here by this one, you're going to get the original term back. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to multiply it by this guy, and I'm going to write the result right here underneath your first term. Okay, so if I go and I multiply negative 4x cubed times x, I'm going to end up with negative 4x to the fourth. Okay, I think you'll remember that. What do I normally do in long division, though, when I get to this step? I always subtract, right? So I'm going to put a subtraction sign out front. So if I take negative 4x to the fourth minus negative 4x to the fourth, that's actually going to be 0x to the fourth, or 0 completely. So I'm not actually going to write that because I don't want to, oh, you know what, I forgot. I guess I'll just go back. Okay, sorry, I forgot to tell you for the next step. Before I do that, I'm going to take this guy, so this term up here, and I'm going to now multiply it by the second term of the binomial. Okay, so now I'm doing the multiplication of negative 4x cubed times negative 3. And so that's going to end up with positive 12x cubed. Okay, so whereas I got 0x to the fourth in this box, now I'm going to actually have 0x to the 3 minus positive 12x cubed, and that's going to end up as negative 12x cubed. What do I always do in long division once I'm done my subtraction? I'm going to bring down the next term. So now I'm going to have positive 2x living right next to this guy. Sorry, positive 2x squared. Now I'm going to repeat the process again, but with this first term. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at how many times does 1x fit into negative 12x cubed. So if I go ahead and put negative 12x squared up here, so see how the exponent is 1 less, then I'm going to be able to go negative 12x squared times 1x and get negative 12x cubed. Then my second step is going to be negative 12x squared multiplied by negative 3, and that's going to be positive 36x squared. And the idea is that the exponents should always line up, right? So they should always be like terms that you're adding and subtracting. So I know I'm going to multiply this whole kit and caboodle. And so I'm going to have negative 12x cubed minus negative 12x cubed. And that's going to go away. There's not going to be a term there. And I'm going to have 2x squared minus 36x squared here. And I'll have negative 34x squared left at the bottom. I can't forget to bring down my next term though. So I've got negative x living right beside negative 34x. Start the process again. Here I go. I'm going to go, how many times can I fit x into negative 34x squared? I can fit it in negative 34x times. I'm going to multiply again. Negative 34x times x is negative 34x squared. Negative 34x times negative 3 is going to be positive 102x. Make sure I subtract the whole thing. These terms are going to cancel out. I've got negative 1x plus 102x. Or sorry, minus 102x. Gotta watch those negatives, right? And so that's going to end up as negative 103x. Bring down this guy, can't forget him. And I'm going to repeat the process one last time. So how many times can x fit into negative 103x? Well, if I write negative 103 at the top, that's going to multiply by x to give me this guy back. And negative 103 times 3 times negative 3 is going to give me positive 309. I'm running out of room, but that's okay. So those guys are going to cancel out when I do my subtraction. Oops. and then I've got negative 3 minus 309. And that's going to end up as negative 312. This is going to be what's called our remainder. So if I was going to write this out, I would make sure that everyone understood that I answer when I divide this whole thing by this binomial. My answer is going to be this polynomial on the top with this as a remainder. Okay? All right, so you can try some of those on your own. I'm going to do a second part of the video for synthetic division, which is basically just a quick way to do this process. What I want you to do first, though, is make sure you practice this process before moving on to synthetic division. Okay? All right, so let's get a new page going here. So we're going to start with synthetic division. So say I was going to divide 2x cubed plus 4x squared minus 5x minus 6, and I want to divide that by x plus 1. Well, I've actually got a theorem which states that I'm allowed to use synthetic division as long as I'm dividing a polynomial by a binomial of the form x minus a. So every time I'm looking at the divisor, I'm just really comparing it to x minus a. So for example, if I had put x plus 2 beside this, I know that a would have to equal negative 1, so that when I put it back into x minus a form, I would end up with the correct divisor. Okay? All right, so the first thing I'm going to do when I write my division statement is I'm going to set it up in the following way. So I know that my A is going to equal -1. We already found that out. And so I'm going to record that information over here. So A goes right there. Then I'm going to put a little box like this so I can keep track of everything. And I'm going to put the coefficients, so all of these guys, of my polynomial on the top row. So I'm going to put the 2 here, the 4 here, the -5 here, and the -6 over here. All right, so the very first thing I do is bring down the first coefficient. So that guy's going to hang out right at the bottom there. Then I'm going to take him, and I'm going to multiply this guy by A. Okay, so I'm going to take 2, and I'm going to multiply it by -1. That answer is going to be written right next, or right underneath the next coefficient. Okay? Then you're going to add. So I'm going to go 4 plus -2 gives me +2. And I'm going to write that there. Now I'm going to multiply this back with A. So I'm going to go 2 times A, which is -1, is equal to -2. So that -2 is going to be written underneath the next coefficient. Now I'm going to add these guys. So I've got -5 plus -2 is going to end up giving me -7. Same idea again. I've got -7 times -1, and I'm going to end up with +7 over here. If I add these guys together, I'll end up with +1 on the bottom. So since the dividend is a polynomial of degree 3, and I know that because I've got my largest power up here as a 3, that means my quotient is going to be 1 less of a degree. So I know my quotient is going to have a degree of 2. So that means when I put these guys in, I'm going to put these coefficients with a degree, with variables of degree 2. So I'm going to go ahead and write it as 2x squared plus 2x minus 7. And then I've run out of variables to use, so this +1 is going to be hanging out as a remainder. Okay? You need to practice both ways. The synthetic division looks confusing at first, but once you've done a couple of them, the process is easy to just whip through. All right, Shay, that's the very first lesson, and I'm going to start cutting them down a little bit shorter each time, but hopefully you got what you needed to out of that. So I will see you tomorrow. Bye, Shay.